Here we are. We are 4 lines into the wide lines. In the middle of the line, Noisei Socher v'Haseicher. Together. Okay. 94b.
Yeah. Almost got to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, again, let's do a brief review. We're talking about the laws of Shomrim, which we've spoken about for quite a while. We were briefly interrupted by the laws of feeding your slaves, feeding your workers, I'm sorry, and now we get back to Shomrim. We want to know the general principles. How do we know that the laws of Shomrim exist? Now, neither of you were here yesterday. I highly recommend getting a Chumash and going through the so-called 3 parshas. These are the 3 sections in Chumash, in Chumash Shemais, Parshas Mishpatim.
Okay.
Where we talk about there were 3 sections that discuss different types of watchman relationships. The third one is clearly about child. There's no question about it. The first and second one says you're exempt from you make an oath if the item is stolen and you're exempt. That's the first parsha. The second parsha says if it's stolen, actually you have to pay. It's only if the item was broken, captured, or died suddenly that you would make an oath and be exempt. But if you, they have it for you there. There it is. Perfect.
Yeah, I read
Perfect. Perfect. Excellent. That's what it is. An introduction to the article of chapter 8. So in that category, so if there's basically an inus beyond your control, you make an oath and you're exempt. But if it's stolen, you have to pay. And that the Gemara says is talking about a shemer soch. Okay. A lot of the today's Gemara is talking about the limudim, the drushes. How do we know that the laws of the Shomrim are the way we've always mentioned them for the past, throughout Talmud? Mention these rules for the past year very, very, very often. Okay, so where are we? So a paid watchman makes an oath for shvura, and mesa, broken, captured, or died suddenly. But they pay for lost or stolen. The verse mentions stolen specifically. If it's stolen, you have to pay. How do we know that stolen is in the same category as? How do we know that lost is in the same category as stolen? Minolan. So the Gemara says the Tanya we learned from the Bryce. Well, the verse specifically mentions stolen. And how do you know lost? Talmud Leimer and Ganav Yiganav. Ganav Yiganav is a doubled phrase. If it was stolen, meaning if it was stolen and it was stolen. What does double stolen mean? Meaning any way that the owner lost it. That includes not just stolen but lost as well. So the Gemara says, this makes sense according to the opinion that says, so there's debate throughout Talmud about the laws of the hermeneutic principles. Is a doubled word significant, or is it normal? It's insignificant. So if it's significant, that makes sense. The fact that the word ganev is repeated is to include aveda, a lost item. But if it's insignificant, then we're back to the original question: what is the source that stolen? That lost is in the same category as stolen. What's the source? So if we say the Torah does not use the language of people, meaning it does not repeat words needlessly. So then, okay, well, if it doesn't repeat word needlessly, why is the word repeated? Tell me, lost is in the same category as stolen. But according to the opinion that says the Torah does repeat words needlessly, so the fact that it's repeated is nothing exceptional. Well, if that's the case, what is the source that Aved is in the category of Gneva? Lost means it's the same equals stolen. So in Israel, they said it's a kal v'chomer. Stolen is much closer to the category of beyond your control than lost, which is quite the negligence there, right? So if you're liable for stolen, for sure you should be liable for lost. The idach, okay, fine, it's a good argument. So then why? Then according to the version that says the Torah does not repeat words needlessly, why does the Torah repeat itself? You have a kal v'chomer. This argument is so good, the Torah doesn't need to tell you aveda, because if it says geneva, then for sure aveda. Stolen for sure means that you'd be liable on loss, because loss is far more negligent than stolen. So the Gemara says, you're right. There are numerous instances where something that's learned from a Kal V'chaimer, this form of comparison, the a priori argument, despite the fact that it can be learned from this argument, it's still written down in the verse. Okay. A shayl pays for everything. Okay, so if the item was broken or died suddenly, the verse states, so that tells you exactly what we're talking about. It was borrowed, right? Guy borrows an animal. And it broke or it died. Then you have to pay. But if it was captured, and how do you know a borrower is liable if the animal was captured? And if you'll say you compare it to shvura and mesa, died and broken. Broken and died. These are the normal. This is the normal course of life. It's quite predictable that some animals are going to have broken bones and will die suddenly. However, unlike captured, which is totally not predictable. Okay, so therefore there's a significant distinction between broken and died and captured. And perhaps that distinction should change the law of captured. Perhaps if it was captured, it'd be exempt. Only if it died, or if it died suddenly, or it was stolen, or broke, would you be liable? But if it was captured, you'd be exempt. So how do we know that captured has the same law as everything else? The example of broken or died is used both by a shayl, a borrower, and by a shomer sachar, a paid watchman. In the terminology we were talking about before, it's in parasha shniya. It's in the second category. The verse specifically says three things actually together, and they are nishbar, nishba, captured, mace. Therefore, malahal and shvuyimai, just like by shomer sachar, we put captured together with died and broken. Afkan shvuyimai, so too by shayl we put it together. So Gemara says, well, 1 second. The comparison has a distinction, which differentiates and undermines the comparison. What's that distinction? A shomer is exempt. A shomer is exempt from broken, died, captured. And we're saying, because just like we put captured between broken and died, so too by shayl we should put captured between broken and died. Except there's a distinction, because by shayl we want to obligate you to pay for captured, and by shomer sachar we want to exempt you from captured. So to the contrary, there's no comparison. Maybe actually captured is so significant as an einus, as beyond your control, that it even exempts you in shayl. The fact that they're equated together by shomer sachar doesn't prove that they would be equated to be obligated by a shayl, by a borrower. You together? Yeah. Okay. So Gemara says fine. So we fall off that. Okay. Elik Rav Nosson. Different argument. Like Rav Nosson. The Tanya Rav Nosson says, Oy l'Rabbi shvuya. The word what is it? Nishbar oimes. That is nishbar oimes. The word oy or comes to include shvuya. So Gemara says, what do you mean? Okay, let's pause here for a second. So now we get to another question about the terminologies of words used in the hermeneutic principles. Let's explain. In Mishnayos, you find very often the Mishnah gives a whole list, and the way the list is done is this the vav connects all of them. But actually, in many cases, when the Mishnah does this, it doesn't mean and, it means or. When the Torah said, let's say the Torah did not use the word or. It said nishba umeis. Would that mean and or? So this is a debate, and let's address it now. Okay. So the Gemara says 1 second. You're telling me that oy is an extra word because and that includes a captured. Hi oy mi b'le'chalak. Well, 1 second. Maybe the or actually is to differentiate. The sagdat chamina, I would have thought adam mitbra umesa. It has to break a bone and die. Nishbar umeis is combined. It's and, not or. So oy, therefore, Kamashmalan oy tells you to differentiate them. So oy is actually not extra and cannot include aveda because oy clearly differentiates here. differentiates between broken or died. Now, this question of whether or not an or is necessary is itself a debate. Let's see. This is true according to Rav Yonasan. The Tanya we learned. Ish asher yikal as aviv es imay. A person who curses es aviv es imay. His father, his mother, vav and his mother. Well, what does that mean? Does it mean he has to curse his father and his mother, or does he have to curse his father, his mother, or his mother? Which one is it? His father and his mother. Aviv b'la imay, his father without his mother, or imay b'la aviv, his mother without his father, his mother without his father. Minayin. How do you know? Ham loymar aviv v'imay kilel. Aviv kilel, imay kilel. He cursed either his father or his mother. Divrei Rabbi Yashia, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yashia. Okay. Rabbi Yonasan says, "Mashma shneim ke'echad u'mashma echad b'fnei atzmai at sheyiftra kosav yachtav." Rabbi Yashia says that if the Torah wants you to combine the two, it must use the word yachtav together. So, I mean, if the Torah says you curse your father and your mother, and it doesn't say the word yachtav together, that means that you're cursing them individually. Similarly, the Torah said v'nishbar oimes, it would have to say yachtav. It would say v'nishbar oimes yachtav. It broke and it died immediately. Otherwise, the nishbar oimes is interpreted as or, according to Rav Yonasan. So according to Rav Yonasan, we resolve this difficulty because oy is not necessary. If the Torah does not use the word yachtav, it doesn't mean and, it means or. However, according to Rabbi Yashia, the word oy is necessary. So according to Rabbi Yashia, what is the source that nishba captured is in the same category of liability for a shayal, a borrower, as broken or died. So the Gemara says the field tamer of Yashia, field tamer of Yashia lachalik. The word oy is coming to differentiate. It's or broken or died. However, over here you don't need the word oy to differentiate. Why? Because okay, meaning, even though normally Rav Yashia says that you need the word oy to differentiate, over here there's no need of oy to differentiate. Why? Because what's the difference if you kill a full animal or you kill an animal partially, meaning you break its bone? Obviously, they're both in the category of there would be seemingly no compelling reason for the Torah to require you to break the animal's bone and then it should die from that break. Clearly, it's two separate instances. Breaking and dying, which is the same thing. It's negating the animal from use. The animal can no longer be used as a workhorse, and therefore you're liable. Therefore, the oy in this case, obviously, the two things are separate, not the same, and therefore oy is not necessary, and oy comes to include mishpa if it was captured. Okay, it doesn't stop here. The rest of the page, a lot of these drushes to know all the rules, figure out derivations for all of them. Okay. Okay, so now we know that a shayl is liable for things that are really beyond his control, and like we mentioned yesterday, we'll mention it again. Let's go again just very briefly. An unpaid watchman is exempt from everything. He makes an oath and he's exempt, as you pointed out many times. Today we don't make an oath, which means he'd be liable. Which means if you want to be an unpaid watchman, you probably should make a condition that you're not required to make an oath, because no court will allow you to make an oath today. We don't do shvur deraisa anymore, and therefore even a shemachinim would end up being liable. As it's a side point. Okay, now, again. So a shemachinim, an unpaid watchman, he's a good Samaritan. So the Torah basically says you're exempt from everything, just make an oath. A shayl is the opposite. In a borrower, the lender is a good Samaritan, right? The lender gets nothing, the shayl gets everything. So what does the Torah say? It says if it's in the domain, in the possession of the shayl, of the borrower. So let's explain. Like I explained yesterday, let's say somebody destroys your car when it's parked outside. Is it your fault?
No.
No.
Well, yes, you shouldn't have been parked outside.
Okay, somebody destroys your car in the garage. It torches your garage. Random, act of total malevolence. You didn't even know the guy. He doesn't know you. He torches your garage. Does it make a difference that it's not your fault? No, you still lost your car. That's the bottom line.
Right.
And therefore, because the object is in the domain of the shayl is responsible for everything, even things that are not his fault. It's not about fault. If it's yours, then you suffer the consequences, whether it's your fault or not. And because it belongs to the shayl suffers all the consequences of having the item in his domain. Okay. Now the nicest sucker is somewhere in the middle. The nicest sucker is sort of a mutual agreement, right? I pay you to watch my item, so I need my item to be watched, and I'm giving you money, so you're gaining, and you're not a good Samaritan anymore. And I need a useful favor, so I'm paying you for it. So I have an expense here. So the Torah basically compromises and say partial negligence you're liable on, totally beyond your control where you're exempt. But if there's a little bit of negligence, you'd be liable. It's the basic idea. Okay, now the Torah specifically says a shayl is liable for the animal suddenly dying. There's no way that's the owner's fault. Okay, show me no. Okay, now, how do we know the shayl is liable also for lesser forms? How do you know if the item was lost or stolen, the shayl would be liable as well? And if you'll say, okay, so the simple way to be argued is as follows. Let's look at died suddenly. Is there any way to protect against that? No. And yet the shayl is still liable. For sure, lost or stolen, where you could protect against it and you didn't, for sure the shayl would be liable for that. Right? Fair enough? Mm-hmm. But there's a distinction, which is died suddenly, broken, and captured. 1 second. Let's skip captured for a moment here. Drop captured for a second. But the other two, which are the ones that are written in the verse, broken and died, there's no way to reclaim the stolen item, the lost item, because it's basically destroyed. Mm-hmm. However, lost or stolen, you could get back the lost item. So therefore, it's even though there's more negligence, but because the loss is recoupable, maybe the Torah does not offer you the same liability protection. Maybe the shayl would be exempt. That kal v'chomer doesn't quite work out. So Gemara says elakiha. Okay, so we learned it from here. The Tanya we learned the animal was broken or died. If the item broke or died. And how do we know lost or stolen? The shayl, the borrower, is obligated to pay for lost or stolen. We say it's kal v'chomer. Shemer Sachar has the ability to exempt himself from einus, from beyond his control, like died suddenly or broke a bone. He still has to pay for gneva v'aveda. He still has to pay for lost or stolen if he's a paid watchman. So a shayl that has even more liability than a paid watchman, for sure should include at least the liability of the paid watchman. Right? Make sense? Mm-hmm. National together. Mm-hmm. Okay. So a borrower that has even more extreme amounts of liability, for sure, it should have the lower level liability of lost and stolen. Okay, and if there wasn't enough, I promise you that this kal v'chomer has no response. Okay, now obviously, if I had to promise you, what does that mean? That there is a response. It's just not a valid one, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't need to make this. I wouldn't need to tell you that. So what is that? The Gemara says, "My anal of tshuva." Okay, so what's the response that isn't a response, right? What's the non-valid response? If you tell me, okay. So let's get back here. Let's go back a little bit. We spoke about this yesterday. We spoke about this many times in the past, also in the beginning of the Masechta and in Bava Kamma. Okay. If you steal something, the penalty for stealing, if you're caught before you had a chance to admit it, is double payment. Kefil. You pay twice. There's an interesting caveat to the laws of Shemer Chinam. An unpaid watchman is exempt for stolen. If the unpaid watchman says it was stolen, he lies under oath that it was stolen, and it turns out he actually has it. This is a unique instance where he actually has to pay double. Let's say instead of saying it was stolen, he lied under oath and said it was lost. Then he does not pay double. It's only if he lies about the fact that it was stolen. Got it?
Yeah.
Now, a shomer sachar obviously can never make an oath that the item was stolen. Why? Because he should be paying. He pays for stolen. He's not exempt. He's not making oath. However, there's one exception to this. It's called lista mezuyin, armed robbers. Like we pointed out yesterday, a watchman or anybody who's a normal businessman is not responsible, even if he's armed, to give up his life over money. It's not an expectation. So if armed robbers come, he's going to hand over the item. And this is an example of a shomer socher, paid watchman, is exempt from armed robbery. Let's say he makes an oath that the item was taken by armed robbers. So then he lies under oath. He might pay kefil. He would pay kefil. We'll soon see why I said might. We'll see in a moment. Maybe you don't pay kefil, but we'll get to why in a moment. I should point out, by the way, that the thief that pays kefil is only a nighttime thief. As we spoke, a daytime thief does not pay kefil. Now the question obviously is, what's an armed robber? Is he a daytime thief or a nighttime thief? So there's a number of different features. What's the feature of a daytime thief? He's a thug. He doesn't care about anybody. What? He's fearless. He's fearless. He's a thug. He doesn't care about anybody. He takes things. A nighttime thief is a chicken, as they say in English, right? He's not only is he afraid of people, but he's also afraid of the owner. That's why he steals at night. When you have armed robbers, it's sort of in between. Armed robbers that come at night, they're afraid of people, but they're not afraid of the owner because they have weapons, right? So it's sort of in between. What do you categorize him? Is he a ganev or is he a gazlan? Is he a nighttime thief or a daytime thief? We'll get to it. Okay, for now he's a nighttime thief. So actually, a shomer socher could be more severe than a shoyel. There's one instance where the penalty of being of a shomer socher, the liability incurred by a shomer socher, is greater than a shoyel. What's that? The shomer socher says it was taken by armed robbers at night. He lied, wasn't true. He had the animal in his house. He pays kefil, pays twice. Shoyel, a borrower, will never pay kefil because he can never exempt himself. He always has to pay principal. So you think that might be a difference. Is maybe the reason why the Torah makes more liability by a shomer socher is because there's a type of liability that a shomer socher has that a shoyel, a borrower, does not have. So the Gemara says, yeah, it's true that in one rare instance, it's possible for a shomer socher to have more liability than a shoyel. However, that's not in general an argument. You'd rather have the vast majority of instances paying principal than having one rare instance that could come up where you'd end up paying kefil. Better it's more severe to always be paying principal than to have one rare instance where you pay kefil. Or another possibility is actually kasavar listam zuyin gazlanu. Armed robbers is not considered a nighttime thief; he's considered a daytime thief because he has no fear of the owner. Okay, so if that's the case, a shomer socher will never pay kefil. Not possible. So therefore, a shoyel is always more severe than a shomer socher. If a shomer socher, paid watchman, is going to be liable for lost or stolen, for sure a borrower will also be liable for lost or stolen, in addition to more stricter forms of liability. Okay. Eshkin lechiyev. Okay, so now I know that a shoyel, a borrower, pays for lost or stolen. Okay, so now going back to yesterday again, we learned about an interesting feature of shoyel. There are actually two exceptions of shoyel. One we'll talk about later. I'll just briefly mention it. It's called mesa machmas malacha. This is a pretty obvious one. It died under the normal course of work. And the reason is because a shoyel is supposed to use the animal, right? And if he borrowed it, right? He borrowed it to use it. If the hammer was fundamentally defective, you can't hold him liable for doing exactly what he was supposed to do. So let's say he borrows a hammer and he's banging, and then the hammer breaks, then he's exempt. If the hammer was on the table and my favorite example, the helicopter crashes into it, you're liable for the broken hammer. But if he was using the hammer and it broke suddenly during the normal course of use, that's an exception. We'll talk about it later. The other one we just spoke about is a very unique law called ba'olav imay. Ba'olav imay is a very interesting exception. It basically works as follows. If at the moment of the loan, okay, and the same is true, by the way, of shomer socher as well, of a paid watchman, at the moment that he accepted the item to be watched, he hired the owner. So the borrower here hired the lender to do work for him, and at that moment that he was working, he was hired to do work, the guy borrows the item. By the way, you don't have to hire him if he volunteers for you. So he volunteered to work in your house. And while he's working in your house, you say, by the way, do you have a drill I could borrow? He says, sure, yeah, it's over there, go take it. And he's working in your house, you're exempt from everything. Ba'olav imay. Very interesting type of exception. Now, The
You said take it to use it or take it as like stealing.
no, take it to borrower.
Borrow.
He's giving you a loan. It just happens to be that at the time he gives you the loan, he's in the middle of working for you.
Okay.
Well, again, believe me, I'll try to prepare a few different reasons why this is an exception. For now, you could take it as a chayk. It's a unique law at the time. Why all of you would be exempt.
You're borrowing it from the person who's employed by you, not you're employed by them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
And employed here doesn't mean for compensation.
Sure,
It
sure.
can mean either volunteer or actually employed for compensation. Either
Just
one.
that they're the person who's doing some work for you. You're not doing the work for them.
Exactly.
They're helping you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the lender is working for the borrower.
Okay.
Okay. Now, so let's explain here. In Parsha Shlishis, the third Parsha Shlishi, the third set of laws, the third set of laws talks about a shayla, a borrower. And what it says is all of ein imay shalom yishalom. If you don't have the release of all of imay, you have to pay. What do you pay for? You pay for nishbar aymes, right? Broken or died, because that's what shayla talks about. Now it's true that we added on now gneva and aveda, lost and stolen, to the list that a shomer is liable for. But how do we know it's also added to the list that a shayla borrower is exempt for in the case of Ba'al Avimai? Because Ba'al Avimai only is written in the discussion of shayla of a borrower. So what is a borrower? What is notable about the discussion of a borrower? Highness beyond your control, a broken or died. So I know that broken or died, you'd have an exception of Ba'al Avimai. But what about lost or stolen? Would I also have that exception? And by the way, there's a good reason to differentiate them. The reason is because we don't understand why the Torah says Ba'al Avimai, let's say, for now. We don't understand why you have this release. But it would be most appropriate to apply the release when there's the least amount of negligence. That would be broken or stolen. But where there's more negligence, broken or died. If there's more negligence, like lost or stolen, maybe the Torah does not release you because of Ba'al Avimai. Maybe you're still liable. Yeah? Okay, Ashton L'chiyav, lifter minalan. So it's interesting because this will actually be back and forth and back. You'll see. Okay, lifter minalan. V'chitem, and if you'll say, now from Shvur Mesa, learn from Shvur Mesa, Mal Shvur Mesa, Shkan Einis. Well, it makes sense that you'd be exempt from something that's an Einis, that's more difficult to control. Right? Shvur, broken or died is very hard to protect against. There is no way to protect against it. So that's why the Torah releases you from that obligation because of Ba'al Avimai. But things where you're more negligent, maybe you're not released. Even though it's Ba'al Avimai, you'd still have to pay. You learn from Shemer Sachar. Just like Shemer Sachar is released if the item was... Shemer Sachar is normally obligated and lost and stolen. Except that if it's Ba'al Avimai, he's exempt. Well, how do you know that Shemer Sachar is exempt from Ba'al Avimai? It's not written by Shemer Sachar. It's only written by Shayel, by a borrower. Not by paid watchman. We learn that just like a shayel has the exemption of Ba'al Avimai, so to a borrower, so to a paid watchman also has the same release. Someone says, but my gomer, what's the comparison between how does Shemer Sachar learn from shayel? Even if it's comparison, it makes sense the Torah would release a shayel, a borrower, from something beyond his control because of this unique exception of Ba'al Avimai, because it's beyond his control. Whereas in the scenario of a Shemer Sachar, who said you have the release of Ba'al Avimai, since it was in your control, lost and stolen, is a partial negligence. So the Gemara says you're right, it's not a comparison. Remember, there are three segments. The third segment talks about a borrower, and it begins with vichi, the vav, and if and when a person borrows. It's the third parsha shlisha, the third parsha. Okay, the vav here says the law of shayel is connected to the law of Shemer Sachar of a paid watchman. Just like the law of shayel has the release of Ba'al Avimai, so to the law of Shemer Sachar also has the release of Ba'al Avimai. Just like the release of Shemer Sachar's Ba'al Avimai releases him from Geneva and Aveda, lost or stolen, so too the release of a shayel, a borrower, that release also includes the release of lost and stolen. Okay. Now the Okay, 1 second. Gemara says, okay, regardless, how do you learn shayl, a borrower, from a shomer sacher? Maybe ba'ol avima is given by shayl and by shomer sacher, but the categories are different. By a borrower, the Torah releases you only from einus, but doesn't release you from lost and stolen. Even though it's true that by a shomer sacher, a paid watchman, ba'ol avima will release you from lost and stolen. The reason for that is because that's the only thing you're liable on. But by a shayl where you're liable for einus beyond your control, it would be reasonable to posit that ba'ol avima releases you from einus, from beyond your control, but doesn't release you from that which is in your control, which is Gnei Vaveda, even if the release exists in the context of a paid watchman. As it makes most sense that ba'ol avima, the release, is used only for the most extenuating of circumstances. And for the less extenuating circumstances, meaning that which has negligence, you would not be released because of ba'ol avima. We together? Okay, so here there's a good catch here, which is as follows. How do we know that a shomer chinam is liable in the first place because of gneva and aveda, of lost or stolen?
Right,
we said as a kal v'chomer from shomer sacher. If a paid watchman who's not liable for extenuating circumstances is still liable for lost or stolen, a shayl, a borrower who is liable for extenuating circumstances, should for sure be liable for lost and stolen. There's a key condition here. It's called dai lovim and adin leas kanidin, which means insofar that what's the source of this obligation? Shomer sacher. But shomer sacher has a built-in limitation, and that is ba'ol avima. Insofar that you want to argue that just like a shomer sacher is obligated by lost or stolen, it is also exempt from ba'ol avima. So if you want to take the package, fine, but you got to include ba'ol avima as well. You can't say, well, this is an example of learning more than we know. Meaning, we only know that you're obligated to pay, that a shomer sacher is obligated to pay lost or stolen, where there is no ba'ol avima.
Take ba'ol avima again.
Ba'ol avima is this unique thing where the owner is with you at the time that the time of either the borrowing or the agreement to watch. So we only know that a shomer sacher has to pay where ba'ol of einimai, when you don't have this unique release. But where you do have the unique release, then actually a shomer sacher is not obligated by lost or stolen. So you can't learn that shayl should be more strict than the source. The source gives you strictness insofar that there's no ba'ol avima. But if there is ba'ol avima, you're actually not liable. So shayl can't be more than a shomer sacher. Together? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I should mention to you that daya, this concept called daya, meaning sort of insofar or limited by, is actually a debate between Rabbi Tarf and Rabbi Kiva. Okay, let's continue here. Get to it in a moment. You learn from a shomer sacher. Daya love and lis kanidin. Magnei aved shomer sacher bebaylan potter. After they aved shoyel nami bebaylan potter. Just like lost or stolen of shomer sacher, of a paid watchman, is only when there's no ba'ol avima, but where there is ba'ol avima, you'd be exempt. The whole package has to be brought over to shayel, which therefore exempts shayel from ba'ol avima as well, just like shomer sacher, just like a paid watchman. This one makes sense according to the opinion that uses the principle of daya. According to the opinion that said that would say you can use a kal v'chomer even to learn more than you know. He does not hold of the principle of daya. Then how would he know that a shomer sacher is exempt in the a shayel, a borrower, is exempt using the principle of ba'ol avima, even if the item was lost or stolen? Because the vav connects the law of shayel, of a borrower, to the law of shomer sacher, paid watchman, the connection goes both ways. Shomer sacher is learned from shayel, and shayel is also learned from shomer sacher. Okay. Now we get to the next interesting question. So we learned this thing called ba'ol avima, right? Ba'ol avima is an exemption. Very interesting reason why. Very interesting why this whole exemption exists, but it exists. Now, does ba'ol avima apply only where the owner is not entirely at fault? What happens if the owner is totally guilty? He goes ahead and he puts the item outside and he hangs up a sign for the thieves to take it. Itmar pshia b'baylam. The owner is grossly negligent. But it's ba'ol avima, it's b'baylam. Does ba'ol avima exempt you from gross negligence as well? Pligi bar Rav Acha Ravina. Rav Acha Ravina disagree. Chanamar one says chayav, you're liable. Chanamar potter, and one says you're exempt. Manda Amar chayav kasavar mikra nidish lefanav v'leilefnei fanav. Okay. Okay, let's pause here for a second. Let's explain this and we'll see it inside. Okay. So he said the Chiyah Shal. The Vav connects the law of Shayel to the parsha, the discussion of that which precedes Shayel, which is Shemer Sachar, paid watchman. But what actually precedes the laws of Shemer Sachar, paid watchman? An unpaid watchman, a Shemer China. So the question is now as follows. Do we say that the Vav over here connects it to the one before it, but not to the one before that, the one before the before? Or do we say no, it puts all three into one package? Let's explain. A Shemer Chinam is exempt from everything except for Shaleach Bayad. He laid his hands on it, meaning he was involved. He's guilty, completely guilty.
Okay.
If we connect Shemer Chinam to Shayel, then what do we say? We say, but all of him exempts you in the same category that a Shemer Chinam is also is liable. Meaning, what's the category of liability of a Shemer Chinam, an unpaid watchman? Involvement, basically, gross negligence. So if they're connected, then Ba'olavima actually pertains to gross negligence as well. If they're not connected, then it's only connected to Shemer Sachar, paid watchman, who's liable even without gross negligence. So then, therefore, it would make sense to presume that actually for gross negligence, Ba'olavima would not be a release. You would still be liable even for anything that happens where you're grossly negligent or involved in the actual event. Okay, Hilkoch. 1 second. So mikra nidrush lefanav lefnei fanav. Only the ba'olavim applies only to the law of Shemer Sachar, not to the law of Shemer Chinam. Okay, and Hilkoch and ba'olavim Shemer Chinam like siv. It's not referring to Shemer Chinam. Kshiyanayim b'Shemer Sachar shayel like siv. And gross negligence is not mentioned in the context of either a paid watchman or a borrower. Hilkoch b'Shemer Sachar b'shayel lechiyav asya b'kal b'chaymer mishemer Chinam. Of a bile lifter after Shemer Sachar b'shayel loy. By time I kick seven balavima loy shal ashal b'Shemer Sachar ahana chiyuv v'tichsiv behed Yehudah mechtev. Basically, as follows: the law of Ba'alav Imai applies only to that which is written in the context of Shemer Sachar, paid watchman, and a borrower, which is lost, stolen, died, broken, captured. That's where Ba'alav Imai applies. But gross negligence, obviously, these things would be liable for gross negligence because of the Kal V'chaimer. If Shemer Chinam, it's exempt for everything, is liable for gross negligence. Certainly, where you're not exempt from even minor negligence, you for sure would be liable for gross negligence. But we would not equate that Kal V'chaimer to exempt you from the law of Ba'alav Imai. Ba'alav Imai would only apply to those 5 categories: lost, stolen, broken, died, and captured. Manda Amar Potter, the opinion that says Ba'alav Imai would exempt you even from gross negligence. Kasavar mikra nidish lefanav v'lefnei fanav v'chiksiv Ba'alav Imai asher mechinam namiksiv. Ba'alav Imai applies not only to the law of shemer of a borrower and a paid watchman, but also to an unpaid watchman, meaning that an unpaid watchman is exempt from gross negligence in the scenario of Ba'alav Imai. If at the moment of the loan the owner was doing work for the watchman, then the watchman would be exempt. Okay, and the ride continues tomorrow.
Oh my goodness.
It's 6:10, 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock tomorrow.
Yeah, just make an amendment.
Regular time. Regular time. Okay, join me.
Huh?